Flight 847 was cruising at 35,000 feet, the hum of the engines a soothing background to the quiet chatter of passengers. It was supposed to be just another routine trip from New York to London. The flight attendants were serving drinks, and passengers were settling into movies or drifting off to sleep. But then everything changed. Without warning, 5 men and 1 woman stood up from different parts of the plane, moving with military precision. Each mercenary wore casual clothes, but their demeanor was anything but. In seconds, they had taken control. A tall, muscular man with a calm, deadly focus walked down the aisle, holding a gun. His name was Victor, the leader of the group. His voice was cold as he addressed the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this plane is now under our control. Follow our instructions, and no one gets hurt." Panic rippled through the cabin, but Victor's team moved quickly. The passengers were rounded up and forced to stay in their seats as the mercenaries sealed off the cockpit. The pilot and co-pilot were held hostage, with a 4th man working the flight systems to ensure no distress signals were sent. Among the passengers was Ethan Cross, a man with gray streaks in his hair and a calm expression that didn't match the chaos around him. A former military operative who had seen more than his fair share of high-stakes missions, Ethan had left that life behind. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. As the mercenaries moved through the plane, Ethan noticed each of their roles: the tech expert overriding communications, the muscle controlling the crowd, the explosives expert placing charges near the cockpit, and the sniper perched in a corner for backup. They were well-trained and highly skilled. But they didn't know who was on board. Ethan had his own reasons for being on this flight, unrelated to the mercenaries' plot. But now, taking back the plane was his priority. The first mercenary to go down was a hulking brute named Lars, who had been sent to check the cargo hold. Ethan had slipped away unnoticed, using the commotion as cover. In the confined space of the cargo bay, Ethan's experience and agility came into play. He moved silently, catching Lars by surprise, disarming him in seconds and choking him out. He stashed the body in a corner before returning to the cabin unnoticed. Victor, noticing Lars was missing, sent another mercenary to investigate. This one was sharper, Lucas, the explosives expert. But Ethan was waiting. He used a small, concealed blade to neutralize Lucas quickly, knocking him out and hiding him as well. Back in the cabin, tensions were rising. Passengers were growing anxious, and the mercenaries began to realize something was wrong. Victor could sense the shift. 2 of his team had gone dark, and that meant there was someone on the plane, someone capable. In the tight confines of the plane, Ethan continued his strategic takedowns. He took out the tech expert next, cutting the mercenaries off from their communications and further disorienting them. Each move was precise, calculated. He left no trace of his presence, making the mercenaries increasingly paranoid. Victor, now desperate, gathered the remaining 2 mercenaries and locked down the cockpit. His voice came over the plane's intercom. "Whoever you are, you can't stop us. We have the cockpit. This plane is going where we want it to." Ethan knew time was running out. He moved toward the front of the plane, using the panic and chaos to blend in. Victor and the last 2 mercenaries had fortified the cockpit, but they were too focused on protecting their position to notice Ethan slip into the small compartment next to the cockpit door. The final battle was fast and brutal. Ethan used the tight spaces of the plane to his advantage, taking down the sniper first with a well-placed blow and turning the gun on the last mercenary. Victor, realizing he was outmatched, tried to flee to the emergency exit, but Ethan cornered him near the cockpit. "Who sent you?" Ethan demanded, his voice cold. Victor smirked, blood dripping from his lip. "You think taking me out will stop this? You're too late." Ethan knocked him unconscious before stepping into the cockpit, where the pilots were unharmed, though shaken. With the plane back in control, Ethan disappeared into the crowd of passengers as if nothing had happened. By the time the authorities arrived, there was no sign of the man who had single-handedly saved them. Ethan Cross was just another name on the flight manifest, a ghost with unfinished business of his own.